something strange happened after a Browns win. Instead of parade vibes, Cleveland's loudest, most honest voice got off the leash. Tony Rizzo, a man who's watched this franchise self-sabotage more times than anyone can count, didn't celebrate. He exploded. Not because the team lost, but because everything that happened on Sunday begged a question he and every Browns fan have been yelling for months. Why wasn't Shedeur Sanders starting from day one? Think about it. An elite defense that's been carrying this team all season finally gets a lead. The offense comes alive. The sideline buzzes. The defense, suddenly free to be aggressive, packs 10 sacks into a game and looks like the championship unit we all hoped for. That sequence didn't feel like luck. It felt like a reality Cleveland could and should have had weeks ago. And Rizzo calls it what it is: preventable. This isn't just one man's hot take. It's an indictment of half a season of decision-making. Rizzo's anger lands because the tape supports him. That 52-yard throw, the energy shift, the way the offense suddenly made the defense's job easier. If Shedeur can do that in his first start with limited reps, what were they waiting for? Rizzo argues the cost isn't just a few losses. It's a wasted championship window for a defense that may not get many more primes. This moment is bigger than a tweet or a rant. It's a demand for accountability and a warning that the front office and coaching staff will have to answer for the chances they didn't take. Tony Rizzo didn't just vent after the Browns win. He detonated. And what made his outburst hit so hard across Cleveland wasn't the volume of his frustration, but the accuracy of it. Rizzo has been covering this team long enough to recognize patterns, and what he saw on Sunday wasn't a breakthrough. It was confirmation of something fans have suspected. Since training camp, the Browns had the right quarterback on the roster the whole time and chose to ignore him. Rizzo's anger comes from a place Clevelanders know too well: wasted potential. This fan base has endured quarterback purgatory for more than 2 decades. Every time a spark shows up, the organization either mishandles it or smothers it. So when Shedeur Sanders stepped into his first start and instantly elevated the offense, it wasn't just surprising, it was infuriating, because it exposed how preventable the Browns' struggles really were. From the moment Shedeur took the field, the energy shifted. He wasn't rattled. He wasn't wide-eyed. He played like someone who'd been waiting for this moment far too long. And Rizzo picked up on that immediately. His message wasn't subtle. This isn't a fluke. This is what happens when you finally play the best quarterback on the roster. And that's why Cleveland responded to Rizzo's rant the way they did. With agreement, not pushback. Fans weren't shocked by his words. They were relieved someone finally said them out loud. They've watched the defense dominate week after week, while the offense sputtered like a bad engine. They've watched close games slip away because the team refused to make the most obvious adjustment possible. And when Shedeur's first start produced competence, energy, and actual points, the truth became impossible to ignore. Rizzo's outrage wasn't about one good game. It was about the months Cleveland lost before that game even happened. He knows, and the city knows, that decisions like this don't just cost wins. They cost seasons. They waste prime years of elite players. They shrink championship windows. And that's the painful reality Cleveland is now reckoning with. What happened the moment Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the field wasn't normal. Rookie quarterbacks aren't supposed to walk into their first start and flip an entire franchise's energy switch. They're supposed to look nervous, hesitant, overwhelmed. But Shedeur walked in like he'd been waiting for this spotlight his entire life. And the impact was immediate. For months, Cleveland's offense felt like a chore to watch. Drives stalled. Third downs felt hopeless. The sideline looked flat, almost resigned. But the instant Shedeur took control of the huddle, something snapped back into place. The offense suddenly had rhythm. Wide receivers ran their routes with more urgency. The line blocked longer. Even the play calling looked more confident. It was as if the entire team realized we finally have a chance. Then came the throw. The one Tony Rizzo and Pete Carroll both called the moment everything changed. Rolling out under pressure, 52 yards downfield, threading a pass that only the receiver could touch. That wasn't a rookie mistake-risk throw. That was a franchise-level, tone-setting strike. Those are the kinds of plays that elevate teams. The ones that tell the defense, we've got you, go hunt. And hunt they did. Cleveland's defense, which had been grinding through close games all year, suddenly got to play with a lead. Not a field goal, not a lucky turnover, a real, comfortable lead. And you saw what happened. 10 sacks, an avalanche of pressure, pure unleashed aggression. This wasn't a coincidence. It was cause and effect. Give an elite defense a cushion, and they turn into a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. Shedeur didn't just bring completions. He brought belief. The sideline was loud again. Players were celebrating between drives. The stadium came alive in a way it hasn't in years. And the most important part, Shedeur never looked overwhelmed. He looked like this was exactly where he belonged. One afternoon, one start, one spark that changed everything. Tony Rizzo's fury doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from months of watching the same predictable nightmare play out over and over again. Cleveland's defense would dominate, the offense would sputter, and the Browns would walk off the field knowing they wasted another winnable game. And now, after seeing what Shedeur Sanders can do, Rizzo is calling out the biggest failure of the season. This switch should have happened in week 1. From the moment training camp started, Cleveland's quarterback situation felt wrong. The staff kept forcing the same struggling veterans into starting roles, hoping something would magically click. Meanwhile, Shedeur, the one quarterback with upside, poise, and real playmaking ability, was stuck running scout team reps. Rizzo didn't buy the excuses then, and he certainly doesn't buy them now. Because Shedeur's debut didn't look like a developmental project being rushed into action. It looked like a prepared, polished, confident quarterback who should have been starting months ago. And that's what haunts this fan base. Not the losses themselves, but the realization that so many of them were avoidable. Cleveland didn't need elite quarterback play to win earlier in the season. They just needed competence, a few sustained drives, a couple of explosive plays, someone who could convert a third down without the stadium holding its breath. Shedeur provided all of that instantly, which raises the uncomfortable reality Rizzo keeps hammering. If he could do this now, he could have done it weeks ago. Think about the close losses, the games where the defense gave up fewer than 20 points, the games that slipped away because the offense couldn't stay on the field. Even a modest bump in quarterback play would have swung multiple matchups. Rizzo sees the season not as a disaster, but as a blown opportunity. A year where Cleveland had the talent to compete, but lacked the courage to make the necessary change. When a defense believes the offense can keep them in the game, they stop playing scared. They start hunting. They take risks. They play loose. And suddenly, everything you saw on tape all year, the speed, the communication, the swagger, turns into chaos for the opposing offense. That's exactly what unfolded once Shedeur tilted the field in Cleveland's favor. Rizzo pointed out something deeper too, the defense's reaction to Shedeur. These are veterans like Myles Garrett, guys who've been through every frustration imaginable. Yet on Sunday, they were standing on the sideline watching their rookie quarterback sling the ball around. And they were hype. They were engaged. They were celebrating throws the way offensive players usually celebrate sacks. That kind of mutual energy doesn't happen unless the locker room sees something real. And that's why the defense unintentionally exposed the real problem of the first half of the season. They didn't suddenly get better. They didn't suddenly figure things out. They finally got the support they'd been begging for. The offense didn't need to be elite. It just needed to function. to give them space to dominate. Shedeur did that instantly. This is where Tony Rizzo's frustration turns into something heavier. Because once you see what Shedeur Sanders did in one afternoon, you can't avoid the question hanging over this entire season. How many wins did the Browns leave on the table? And the painful truth is, a lot. Cleveland didn't need MVP-level quarterback play to change their record. They just needed someone who could keep the offense alive. Someone who could convert a third down, stretch the field, or simply avoid putting the defense back onto the field every 2 minutes. The Browns lost multiple games by a single score. Games where the defense held opponents under 20 points, practically begging the offense to meet them halfway. But the offense couldn't. Not because the talent wasn't there, but because the quarterback position was a revolving door of panic, hesitation, and missed opportunities. Now ask yourself, what would those games have looked like if Shedeur had been in the lineup from week 1? A quarterback who doesn't flinch in pressure, a quarterback who trusts his reads, a quarterback who can extend plays, escape collapsing pockets, and hit receivers in stride. Those aren't luxuries. They're the very things Cleveland lacked in every close loss. That's why Rizzo is furious, because this isn't hindsight. This isn't now that we know, we can speculate. Fans were calling for this months ago. Analysts questioned the stubbornness. Even players hinted at needing a spark. The organization ignored all of it. And the cost wasn't just losses. It was momentum, confidence, chemistry, prime seasons of elite defensive talent. These aren't things you get back. In the NFL, windows close fast. Players age, contracts expire, injuries pile up. When you waste half a season before making the right move, the damage doesn't disappear just because the rookie finally got his chance. Shedeur's debut didn't just show what the Browns could be, it showed what they should have been. And that realization is what stings the most. When a rookie quarterback makes a big throw, fans get excited. When analysts praise it, people take notice. But when Pete Carroll, a Super Bowl-winning head coach known for evaluating quarterbacks better than almost anyone in the modern era, singles out a specific play and says it set the tone for the entire game, that's different. That's validation from someone who's seen enough football to know the difference between a lucky highlight and a franchise-level moment. Carroll didn't just say Shedeur's 52-yard strike to Isaiah Bond was impressive. He emphasized how it happened. Rolling out under pressure, eyes downfield, keeping the play alive, then dropping a perfect ball over tight coverage, those are traits you can't teach in a classroom. Those are instincts. That's feel. That's the rare combination of poise and playmaking that separates promising prospects from quarterbacks who actually survive in the NFL. And Carroll's reaction matters because he's not tied to the Browns. He doesn't benefit from hyping their rookie. He's not part of the Cleveland media cycle. When someone like him praises a throw, it's because the play deserved it. This is exactly why Rizzo refuses to let this moment slide into the usual Cleveland, "Hey, maybe we have something," optimism. Carroll confirmed what the tape already showed. Shedeur isn't just managing games. He's creating plays most rookies wouldn't even attempt. And he did it with limited practice reps, minimal chemistry with his receivers, and the weight of an entire franchise on his shoulders. Now imagine that same talent with a full offseason, a tailored playbook, and real continuity. That's the nightmare scenario for every defensive coordinator watching Shedeur's film right now. Because what he did against the Raiders wasn't his ceiling, it was his starting point. Carroll's praise didn't inflate expectations. It exposed just how much potential Cleveland has been sitting on. And it added another voice, a respected, championship-level voice, to the growing list of people asking the same question Rizzo posed. Why wasn't this kid starting months ago? One of the things that pushed Tony Rizzo over the edge wasn't just the Browns' slow decision-making. It was the way the media kept trying to soften the entire situation. While fans were begging for accountability, certain analysts kept feeding the public the same tired lines. Be patient. Trust the process. The coaches know what they're doing. But patience is only a virtue when progress is actually happening. And for half the season, Cleveland's offense looked like it was stuck in the mud with no plan to escape. Rizzo wasn't buying any of it, and he finally snapped once Shedeur Sanders proved in a single game that the offense's problems weren't about talent shortages. They were about leadership choices. That's why he called out the media directly, because instead of confronting the obvious, that Cleveland kept the wrong quarterbacks on the field for far too long. Many outlets tiptoed around the truth to protect the coaching staff. Worse yet, reports started circulating that the Browns were already considering drafting a new quarterback in 2026. Not evaluating, not exploring, planning. Planning to replace a rookie who just delivered the best offensive spark the team has seen all year. Rizzo labeled it exactly what it is: dysfunction disguised as strategy. He pointed out how other franchises, Houston with C.J. Stroud, San Francisco with Brock Purdy, fully committed to their young quarterbacks the moment they saw even a glimpse of potential. They nurtured it. They built around it. They didn't panic at the first sign of adversity or hedge their bets before the kid even had a chance to grow. Cleveland, on the other hand, seems terrified of trusting the obvious. And Rizzo refuses to let the organization hide behind vague quotes and friendly press conferences. The fans aren't confused. The defense isn't confused. The locker room isn't confused. Shedeur is the spark they've needed all season. And the media's mixed messaging only made the delay more painful. One of the most revealing parts of this whole situation didn't come from the coaches, the fans, or even the analysts. It came from Jerry Jeudy himself. When a reporter asked him about adapting to yet another quarterback change, his answer wasn't hostile, but it carried a "Wait, you couldn't miss. Ain't nothing I can control. I just run my routes and do what I do." It was honest, it was raw, and it exposed a chemistry problem Cleveland can't afford to ignore. Jeudy has been shuffled through quarterbacks his entire career. Veterans, backups, projects, schemes that never fit, systems that kept changing. It wears on a receiver. At some point, frustration stops being emotional and becomes survival instinct. And that's what made his comments sting. Not because he was attacking Shedeur, but because he was exhausted from instability. But here's where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. While Jeudy sounded worn down, Shedeur Sanders is approaching every snap like a man who refuses to waste a single opportunity. His hunger is obvious. His energy is contagious. He's studying relentlessly, practicing like he's still fighting for a roster spot, and showing the kind of work ethic that forces everyone around him to elevate. And that's the difference Rizzo and the fan base are locked in on. When Shedeur threw that perfect ball that Jeudy later fumbled, the reaction on the sideline said everything. Shedeur didn't sulk, he didn't point, he didn't freeze up. He jogged back, reset, and attacked the next drive. That calm confidence is what elite receivers thrive under. The frustration Jeudy carries isn't about Shedeur, it's about everything he's endured until now. The key question is whether these two trajectories can meet in the middle. Because if Jeudy locks into Shedeur's energy, if the timing sharpens, and if the trust builds, Cleveland could suddenly have one of the most explosive young QB running back pairings in the league. Shedeur's hunger isn't the issue. Jeudy's fatigue isn't the villain. The problem has always been instability. And for the first time in years, the Browns might finally have a quarterback who can stabilize everything around him. What becomes clear after everything that's unfolded is that the Browns are standing in a moment they absolutely cannot afford to mishandle. The shift didn't happen gradually. It wasn't the result of some new scheme or a sudden breakthrough in the locker room. It happened the instant Shedeur Sanders walked onto the field and played like someone who had been preparing for this opportunity long before the coaching staff believed in him. You could feel it everywhere, in the huddle, on the sideline, in the stands. His confidence wasn't loud or arrogant. It was steady, controlled, and contagious. Players responded to it, veterans respected it, and suddenly an offense that looked lifeless for most of the season showed signs of rhythm, purpose, and actual danger. That's not an accident. That's leadership. At the same time, the emotional contrast from players like Jerry Jeudy revealed exactly why this moment matters so much. There's frustration in that locker room. Not anger toward Shedeur, but exhaustion from instability and a carousel of quarterbacks that never allowed chemistry to grow. For the first time in a long time, they finally have someone whose energy points forward instead of sideways. Someone who brings clarity instead of uncertainty. And that's why this is bigger than one win or one impressive debut. The Browns have spent years searching for a quarterback who could elevate the talent around him, rather than drag it down. Now they've found one, and the responsibility shifts entirely to the organization. They can't repeat old habits. The constant second-guessing, the quarterback of the future distractions, the unwillingness to commit fully when the answer is right in front of them. Shedeur Sanders gave the Browns something they haven't had in ages, a spark that changed the way the entire team played, a gear they didn't know they had, a sense of belief that hasn't existed in years. The fans feel it, the players feel it, the city feels it. Now the question is whether the people in charge finally understand what they have, and whether they'll build on it instead of letting another opportunity slip through their fingers.